Yeah, so it's definitely like early on, you want to be playing with motion. So when you know what you want to animate, then you kind of know what's in your interface already, what things users are interacting with, what things, when they click those things, what gets queued up and what gets shown. So it's good to do that early, and you could even do that like just drawing on a whiteboard. You don't even need to do code or do a prototype or anything. But when you do get it in a prototype, since it is interactive, you definitely want to go through research, and you want to show it to users and get their feedback. If they think it's too much or too in your face, then you scale back. You may use a different animation principle, or something that's a little bit faster, or something that's a little bit slower. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Issara, this one's for you. So you do a lot of training on After Effects, obviously. What are some of the aha moments that people sort of have to get past when they've never used a tool like After Effects, especially like designers?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. First of all, I deal with people who have primarily wanted to use After Effects as a tool for a while, and so my fast start training kind of just removes all of that at once, which is the workflow, because they just want to make cool stuff. So just knowing the steps, knowing what to avoid, that's helpful. Beyond that, I think the velocity curves is just like really getting your head wrapped around that at a deep level, and then it's just a matter of really what do people want to create? So looking at techniques and stuff like that. I think 3D is a really cool thing that they start to wrap their head around that and the possibilities within the UI and behavioral models, but it really sort of unlocks a lot of potential there. So that's something that I see people being really excited about.
Let me ask you this. This is actually a question for both of you guys. So you guys both mentioned a bunch of animation prototyping tools, like After Effects kind of being on the most complex side of the fence. Somebody who's just starting out, what do you recommend them to start in? I know you guys both have expertise in After Effects and other tools, so Mark, why don't you take it first?
Yeah, so just something that is easy to pick up is just something that I kind of went through too. So if it's for the web, then just learning CSS. It's not that hard to animate, and a lot of the animation that you use is sort of prone to, at first by default, to have a lot of easing into it already. And so you get a lot of effects that are smooth and not linear. You actually have to, in order to make it linear, you have to tell it to be linear. I would say CSS, it's not really a program, but it is a tool that you could use, and it's close to a designer's heart. So whatever color you want, put it in. If you want it to be X and Y big, put it in. And it's all values that you can control. So I would say CSS, but there's a lot of cool tools out there that introduce animations. Pixate is one of them. If you do a lot of native prototyping, it's definitely a tool for designers to pick up. And so just to learn a little bit more about dynamics and how they're affected. It's a pretty cool program. It's all web-based, and it's built in React, which is awesome. A couple of other tools for animation. I wouldn't say it's like, I guess it does have animation, but in Vision, you can do like screen transitions and animate various things in it, but it has its limits. Where CSS is easy, but you can get super complicated with it, especially if you're using like Sass or stylus and any functions within those preprocessors. You could get some pretty amazing results, but you have to know a little bit of coding. But it doesn't require a lot to get started.
Yeah. Issara, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I really look at what people are trying to accomplish, first of all. and then figure out what tool would be a good fit and what their existing skill set is. So, with what I teach, I just pre-qualify people and I say, look, if you're doing, like just stock-based kind of, easy stuff, Pixate is a great tool. Sketch is also really awesome. A lot of people have a lot of success using those tools. And beyond that, if you're just looking to do whatever you want, like Framer is really, really cool. But if you don't have a development background or just don't want to deal with numbers and type and stuff, then like After Effects is great. And that's great. Like again, it's just about like pushing the envelope, right? And not everybody needs to do that. A lot of the time, you just need to get some screens in there and just get some basic transitions going, and you're done. And that has the value that it's intended to deliver in the process, right? So it's really important to me to not just try and use a tool because it's trendy or whatever, but really look at what's the biggest bang for your buck, what's going to deliver pinpoint value on a project while kind of building on what's an existing system already. To use whatever assets you have, so you're not rebuilding assets, for instance, which is a huge pain in the ass. So I just get really conversational, really, and say, look, what are we trying to accomplish here? What's the end result? What kind of assets do we have? What kind of skills do you have? And just look at the suite of tools that are there. Whether it's Sketch, Proto, or just any of those things. Really, they're all great, and they all have little strengths and weaknesses there.
Cool. All right, guys, this is mainly for you guys to ask questions. So if you could use a mic, if not, if you guys could just repeat the question, I'll open it up to you guys.
That works. I saw over here first row.
Do you guys have any source files that you guys could share to show how you guys build those files for animations and stuff in Parallax or Sketch?
Okay. Is this question for the both of us?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Issara, the question was, what sort of source files can you share with? It could be After Effects, it could be maybe even CSS or any preprocessor file. Any source files that we can share that will help you guys check out. You could go first.
Sorry, just trying to understand the question. Are you asking if I can share some source files, or which source files are best to work with?
Yeah, if we could share source files to help get people, maybe a link or a link to
like
videos.
Post some?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I'll totally post a zip with some links to some lessons in source files. Totally, absolutely. Yeah, and so I have some that I'll share with, which has a Photoshop workflow into After Effects with the whole video you can watch and just get started tonight and just be cranking through it for the folks that want to do that. Does that answer your question? I feel like I maybe don't quite understand it.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, rockin'.
All right, awesome. Yeah, anyone else?
You've got stuff on GitHub, right?
Oh yeah, so the presentation that I did is on GitHub. It was built using reveal.js. It also has Angular on it, and it has like Gulp as a builder. I'm kind of like a side developer, so but it's all on GitHub. You can check out if you know GitHub. They have a really good client. You could download a repo and check out all the source code. The CSS has it's built in Sass. So and the presentation had animations in it. So you can check all that out there. Yeah. There was another one. Yes.
Yeah. Kind of going back to a question the presenter was asking. In my experience of working with startups and less design-focused companies, as soon as you bring up that you want to include animation in your design, PMs will sometimes balk and say, that's going to get complicated.
We don't have the time for it.
Yeah, exactly. So I totally see the value and how design is going in the direction of using more and more animation. Have you had that reaction?
I know it's kind of late to give you
No,
that,
that's
but
okay. Have you had that reaction of it's too complicated, we don't have time for animations from a client or a PM, and how have you responded to that?
yeah. So I'll go ahead and answer this one first, Issara, and I'll get that back from you. So have we had any problems with PMs about not incorporating animations because maybe there's a deadline or maybe they just didn't like animations in their stuff? Totally. Usually that's called fit and finish, and that is saved towards the end of typically of a Scrum sort of system. And yeah, it's sort of painful from a design standpoint, but it does need to work first. I did have a slide about it actually working first. So a lot of teams will get sort of stuck on, and eventually there'll be sort of like visual and UX a backlog just for that stuff. And then it always gets pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. What sort of helps that along, though, if you have a prototype that already has those animations in there, and if you hand developers or have a design system like we do at Salesforce, it's easier for them to incorporate stuff because it's already done. And yeah, it's a pretty good system. So it basically lessens the fact of saying, oh, no, we don't have time. What do you mean you don't have time? It's already done. Zara, you want to give anything there?
Yeah, totally. First of all, I just want to speak to the last question. Your presentation online is awesome, by the way, man.
Thanks.
Watched that. It was totally cool. So just wanted to call that out. I just loved it, man. So thank you for putting that together.
Sure.
To answer this question, I'm perhaps a little bit fortunate because I usually get called in after we've gotten the green light to do some really cool stuff. So I don't usually have those conversations with people, but I do, like talking to team members who have struggled with this question, I find that the people who do really well in this context are the people that will just, I hate to say it, but they'll put in a couple late nights and they'll just create something and prove it and say, look, this is going to make a difference in the project. Part of this speaks to like just the culture within where you're working, and part of it speaks to the commitment people have for the project. Like, is this a project where motion actually is of value itself, right? Whether it's like a game-based thing, obviously motion is going to be huge. So this conversation probably won't happen. But if you look at something where it's maybe like the Clear app, for instance, where you're dealing with unfamiliar things, and there are designers there that are trying to prove stuff, motion can really facilitate the conversation and move things forward a lot. In my experience, being able to prototype something really quick, which is what I teach, like not spending days and days, but just like, dude, you just bust it out in like an hour, and now we've proved this like interaction behavioral model like in a really like short amount of time. Circumvents having a conversation with a higher up, can we spare like an hour or something? No, you just bust it out and you see that. But it is a struggle because with some places where I get called in to consult, they've been having this conversation for 6 months, right? And they're like, look, and the designers know they're just not getting the quality they want from their dev team. And it is frustrating, and it is a pain point to have something that you care about deeply just look like crap, and so what do? And it really is a thing about just getting people present. So what's your commitment? Like Airbnb team, their commitment was to have this be like world class, right? They were making a high quality product, so it just wasn't going to fly. So they needed to take different actions consistent with what they're committed to. And so for me, it's just about getting present. But like if it's a startup or something, and there isn't just funding for that, I'd say you just have to put in a couple late nights and prove how amazingly valuable this communication tool will be that will move the conversation forward.
What about, hey Mark, I have a question related to that. So,
Wait.
yeah, sorry. I violated my own rule. What about something really tangible like usability? So, Mark, I'm sure you've sat in a ton of usability tests. Can you give us an example of where using motion or animation created a real impact on making a product more usable, where you could actually measure it?
Yeah, so I used to work on what we call core, so Salesforce 1, and now I work on analytics, where we have a lot of charts that animate and go from chart to chart to chart, and there's a lot of dynamics with that. And so things can go from a bar chart to a pie chart, and it's all built in Canvas, and there's a lot of dynamic stuff going on. And so sometimes that could be a little jarring, and that's something where we have the animation is quick enough, but it also can't take forever to animate to the next chart. So we've done a little bit of user testing on it, not any extensive testing, but we are going to be rewriting the engine and looking at the timing for chart-to-chart animations, and just keeping that in mind. Maybe instead of animating the actual bar to a slice of the pie, maybe that particular bar fades out in some sort of like sequence, and then the pie chart sections actually fade in sequence. So it's a little bit less jarring, but there's still a transition. And when you look at the user interaction of going from a pie chart to a bar chart, we need to make that transition. So we could do a quick cut, and that we could be said and done. But if we have some elegance to it, again, it drives presentations of our users actually showing it to their manager or a VP, and that VP presenting those charts. So, and plus it's like chart sexiness. So like we definitely want to not make it look like clip art, so. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah. Wait, hold on. Yeah, just turn it on. Does this work? Just turn it on. Yeah, test it.
Can you hear me? No?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, guys. I was just wondering and apologies if you answered this if this question was asked already, but you both spoke a little bit to personality and identifying and designing a motion language to reinforce, maybe even extend the personality of your app or your products. So I'm wondering if you have any strategies or even like an approach where maybe if you go into a product team, they might have a design that has already started to define the personality, the identity. How do you take that and develop a motion language from that, a strategy or canvas for it?
Yeah.
What are some real approaches that you could apply to get that?
Yeah. So what are some approaches to Issara? Did you hear all of that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clear.
Awesome.
I got it.
Did you want to go first, and I'll follow it up?
Sure, man. Yeah, well, at an extreme point, you have like maybe more like entertainment-based designs, right? That are maybe like fun and whimsical, and then you would design motion that would reflect that, right? So you might have like some bouncy things or elasticity, and that reinforces this kind of physicality. And that's just in the velocity curves and timing itself. That's an actual design of motion. And then you may have things where like they're more dimensional, so they're coming through space, and those may reflect more of a different kind of velocity and movement as something flies up versus something like has a very clean, minimal, simple design concept that is very sparse and spare. And you may just do very simple, very elegant, basic velocity curves for that, and just keep it clean. Just keep it really, really clean, so that it's not like you're feeling something, but it's just like a seamless kind of movement, as opposed to a motion that's actually expressing something that's inherent to the overall design experience. I don't know.
I would say, yeah, it definitely depends on the type of product. So if it's social, usually it's pretty fun. You can get a little bit more whimsical. If it's sort of a productivity app, users need to get stuff done. So you don't need animations to get in their way, but the app should have sort of like a voice and tone. So if there's like an existing voice and tone, is what you're kind of pointed out, and you need to apply like some sort of motion system, I like to think that whoever is creating the motions can match that and enhance it. It's kind of like saying that like you don't like the color green, and one designer loves it and the other designer hates green. Well, certain things are going to match up with a voice and existing voice and tone of like certain types of animation. So I'd like to think that designers can try different types of animations and see if it fits that voice and tone that enhances the entire experience, feedback, whatever interactions a user has with an app.
Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions? Cool. Oh yeah, what's up? Wait, Mike.
Parallax,
Oh, dude.
hot or not?
So good question. I would say 3 years ago, hot. Today, not. Don't do that. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a marketing thing to use that. I wouldn't use that on any app. But if you're making like a marketing website, yeah, there's really no use cases for like parallaxing anymore, aside from designers saying, hey, look at this, and then stretching a browser, and then, yeah. So I would say not. What do you say, Zara?
I totally missed the question. What's the question?
Oh, man. Parallaxing, hot or not?
Oh, well, okay, so here's the thing. So like all parallaxing is not created equal, right? So I actually have a few lessons of different types of parallaxing, and there are some things out there that don't look like it, but actually are, and it's a very clever kind of, very clean example of it. I don't have any like an app right in front of me that I can show you, but there are. It's come kind of the narrative of that technique is such that you'll see things that look really clean and don't look like a parallax, but actually are developed that way as a parallax experience. And so I think that those really clean, really simple ones that just look hot, to be honest with you, that it doesn't come across like a dimensional parallax thing from like 3 or 4 years ago. So I don't know. You can push it, man.
Yeah. If you just go to like GitHub and type in some random like address, you'll get a 404 page, and there's an SVG of like some parallaxing going on. That's cool, but like the 2012 parallaxing, that is not cool.
I have a question. You mentioned, so what I heard you say earlier, just to paraphrase, was transitions in a lot of apps have a high sort of usability value, right? Especially in the chart example you gave. What about when you were talking about input forms? What are some techniques to use in terms of giving the user response or feedback back that something is happening, such as pressing on a button? What are some like techniques or some go-tos that you guys can use to give feedback back to the user that a state has changed or something like that?
Yeah, so I would say when filling out a form, just say like it's a mixed bag of different elements that have these sort of micro transitions that can happen. So think about it like input texts and selects and buttons, checkboxes, radio buttons. All of these have these these Boolean true or false animations, like it's selected, not selected. It's focused, it's not focused. And when you think through like how a user actually uses that, they click into it or tab to it and remove their hand from the mouse. And their hands are on their keyboard typing, they're filling it out. And they might tab to the next thing, or they might move their mouse and click to the next thing. These are all things that you could look at while doing research, and just not even look at the interface. You know what the interface is. You designed it, right? So some observational research is just looking at the user. Don't even look at, you know that they're going to interact with your interface or form or modal or whatever you're doing. But yeah, just looking at the user might seem kind of creepy, but like it is like observational. You're wanting to know how they use it. So research. Issara, you wanna add?
I would just really I'd be very cautious. Shall we say, like in a forum context, you know, where like somebody's filling in information and or doing something that's requiring like putting in stuff like, you know, animation, like people who don't really have really aren't coming at this from a usability standpoint, they'll kind of just like want to make it cool, and it can just blow up in your face. It can become distracting, it can become a mess, and so really I've seen some really cool examples of things, you know, where the button gives you some feedback and the forums do cool things, and I think it really depends. Like you want to be really clear on what your context is, who your users are, and just really err on the side of caution. Edit hard on the side of caution with those things, because it can come off as goofy, it can come off as just wrong, and oftentimes like less is way more, and just not doing that sometimes. So like just relying on simple things like state changes, like color changes, or you know, something just really like a visual feedback in the design that might not even be animation based, because it will draw the person's eye away from the task that they're doing. So there's a sort of limiting returns there that you really want to be careful of in those contexts. That's just my point of view on like forums and stuff.
Yeah, and to add to that too, I mean, Dribbble is a nice resource to look at really cool stuff, and it might be really hot. Stuff might get a lot of likes, but if that isn't an actual product, sometimes that it's too whimsical for users to actually use the product. And you could get, you know, users can get. This is why you do research, right? You want to find the stuff out before it hits the public. You do research, you kind of justify your design, your motion, and if PMs say they can't do it, it doesn't fit, this is the product, I own it, you could say, no, our users want it, and we tested it, and we have all this research, so blah, you know.
Exactly.
Any other questions? I think we're good, Joe, yeah?
I think that's a wrap then. Thanks for coming out, guys. Thanks to Mark and Issara for a wonderful presentation. Thanks to Salesforce for hosting us tonight.